what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to start with the basics. What that means is we're going to talk about types of investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and types of accounts. So I'm sure you've heard things like 401k, IRA, brokerage account. What does it all mean? We're going to talk about that today. And then we're going to get into the real nitty gritty of how do you get started? How do you pick investments? How do you open up an account? And then resources for you. And then at the end, there'll be plenty of time for questions. All right. So let's start off with, why do we invest our money? So I'm going to give you guys about 15 seconds, 20 seconds in the chat. Tell me why we invest money. Anyone? To get more money. Lana, thank you. That is a great answer. We got someone writing on here. To grow money. All right. Among other reasons, to make money, to preserve its value. Sydney, that's a great answer. Our money isn't worth as much over time because of inflation, right? And of purchasing power. The great example I like to share is when I was a teenager, around your age, I used to go to the United Artists movie theater in Commerce, and it was $8.25 to see a movie. Now, how much is it to see a movie? I think it's probably like $14 or $15, I'm guessing. It's still for one movie ticket, right? So your money isn't worth as much over time. Okay, so we've got to expand money to use it for the future. Kara, great answer. We have to save now because in the future, we don't plan to work, right? We're not going to work every day of our life. That's a great answer. So here's some answers that I have. 1, save for the future. Great. 2, to make money, to grow money, right? That answer came up. When you invest money, and we're going to talk a lot about this, you can earn things called dividends, which is earnings on your money, and compound interest. And that is a key factor that we're going to talk about. And it's like probably one of the most important points that you can walk away with today is, what is compound interest? So we're going to talk about that. Another reason is to beat inflation. Now, I'm sure you've heard in the news recently, inflation's at 9%. Things are getting more and more expensive. The only way for your money to keep up with inflation in the future, to be able to pay for that movie ticket that's now $15 instead of $8.25 like it was for me, is to invest it, right? So I got these really awesome napkin finance images I want to walk you through. So there's this concept of compound interest. I want to explain what that is. So compound interest is, as Albert Einstein said, it's the most powerful force in the universe, is compound interest. Essentially, when you make money, when you invest your money, it makes money, right? It makes money, it grows. But then you make money off that growth. So I've got this great compound interest calculator. Can you guys see this website that's loading?
I can see you flipped over. I don't see. Oh, there we go.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to walk through a little example of compound interest. This is a great calculator I love. Let's say you got $100, right? That seems like a reasonable amount of money. And you decide you want to contribute $75 every month for the next 10 years. Does everyone see that? $100, $75 contributions every month for the next 10 years. Now I'm going to assume that my money can make 8%, which is a reasonable estimate over 10 years time. So as you can see here, I'm making these contributions. So in year 1, I contribute $100 to start, and then $75 a month for 12 months. So I had $900 in the first year. By year 10, I've in total contributed $9,000. It's a lot of money to put aside. Well, compound interest actually allows me to earn money on my money. So by year 10, I've also made an additional $4,843. So in total, this whole bar here is nearly, what was this, 9 plus, that's almost $14,000 that I've made off of just my $9,000 investment. So that the big takeaway here is Sure, you can make money in the stock market. If you buy something for $100 and all of a sudden it's worth $300, you've made $200. But the real meaningful place where you're going to make money is on compound interest. And the only way that you'll have compound interest is if you have your money in the market over time, right? So as this money sits in the market longer and longer and longer, now we get to 20 years. Look at how much money I can make on my money. So that's the big takeaway I want to mention a couple times throughout the presentation today. So everyone really can see it's not necessarily about how much money you can make on your investments, but about how much time you give your money to be in the stock market. Let me go back to the presentation. I think I have to stop the share and then flip back over. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So this little graphic on the right kind of just reiterates that. You invest your money at the top here. You earn money, and that money then is reinvested, and then you earn more money, and then it reinvests and earns again. And then money plus interest is magic. Okay, so that's the big takeaway there. That's probably the most important concept you can understand when you're getting started with investing. All right, so one more example about why you should start now. This is a really basic example. So on the left-hand side, you've got Jack in blue. So Jack starts investing when he's 25 years old, okay? And he invests $200 a month between age 25 and 35, and then he stops investing. And in total, he invests $24,000. Okay, and look at how much money he makes. He makes nearly $300,000. However, Jill invests $200 a month, just like Jack, but starts 10 years later and does it longer. Does it between age 35 and 65, okay? And in total invests $72,000. And despite the fact that Jill invested for 30 years and Jack only invested for 10 years, Jack still has made more money. And they have the same return rate. The whole point here is that compound interest, right? The more time your money has to sit in the market, the more money you are going to make. I saw a hand come up. Holly, did you see that? A question came up? Yes. Here.
Yeah, I had a question. So suppose 1 month you decide to invest, I don't know, $125 into, and the next month, each month, can you increase the amount of money you invest? Like,
Absolutely. You can invest $100 this month, $5 next month. You can do no money next month. You could, do $100 every month. It's really up to you, whatever, based on what you're comfortable investing and what you have access to. Is it Santosh? Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's Santosh. What's the guarantee that you'll get more money?
That is a great question. There is huge risk when you invest, right? There's never a guarantee, right? However, there is no 10-year period that the stock market has lost money. There is no 10-year period the stock market has lost money. The stock market is actually up 75% of the time. So I'm not a crystal ball reader, but I do know that the stock market historically has always paid dividends, right? Now, Santosh, what are you saving for?
What?
But what are you saving for? Why do you want to invest your money?
Oh, to get more money.
Okay, and what are you going to do with that money?
Well, save it for the future.
And spend it on what?
I don't know, college fees, contribute.
Maybe a car, maybe a house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't need to buy a car. How old are you right now?
I'm 12.
You're 12. Okay, you can't even buy a car until you're 16, right? Because you won't be able to drive till you're 16. And you probably don't need a car when you're 16 right away. So you have a long time until you actually need this money. And like I said, as Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all time ever has said, it's not about timing the market or what your investments are. It's about having your investments in the market for a long time. Okay. So let's keep going a little bit. And let's dive into different types of investments. So I'm sure you've heard words like stocks, bonds. Have everyone heard those words before? Am I getting any nods? Okay, stocks, bonds. I've heard people probably heard a lot about crypto. I got some questions about crypto. We're going to talk a little bit about what is a stock, what is a bond. Okay, those are some basics. So let's start with a stock. A stock is buying ownership of a company. Okay, and when you buy ownership of a company, you get a share. And that's why you're a shareholder. Have you ever heard that word shareholder before? Maybe not. Someone will say, oh, there's a shareholder meeting, or I'm a shareholder of this. Okay. So if you buy a stock, you're buying a share of a company. Okay. So on the right-hand side, I just Googled, and this is how you can get information also. I Googled Nike share price yesterday or 2 days ago. Now, Nike has a ticker. So it'd be too long on the stock exchange to type, Nike, or to type Berkshire Hathaway, or to type some of these long company names. So it has an abbreviation. That's called a ticker. Nike's is NKE. Does everyone see that right here? Yes? Okay. Now here's the stock price. If I wanted to buy one share of Nike, it would cost me $107.45. That's the price. Okay. You can also see in this green line how that Nike stock has performed. So you can see this is probably in 2017. It was around $60 a share. And look what's happened over time, right? So it went up really high, it looks like, at the end of 2021. Everyone see that right here? My mouse is. And then it has gone back down since. I don't know why. Maybe you guys know why. I don't know why, but it looks like the stock price has decreased to about $107. Okay. Now, Nike has issued out 1.6 billion shares. So one share is $107. There are 1.6 billion shares out there. Now, the majority of those shares are owned by a guy named Phil Knight. He's the founder of Nike. But you could also buy one share or two shares, or however many shares, half of a share of Nike if you wanted. Now, why do companies give me the opportunity to buy a share of them, right? They're not just nice people, right? They don't just, want to share it out. Santosh, why don't you tell me why? I see you raised your hand.
Well, I think because more people will buy their share, and the stock prices will go up, and that means they get more money.
Well, so that's true, but why do they offer stocks? Why do they offer their shares in the first place? Does anyone know? Anyone? Any hands out there? So the reason why they do it is because they want to raise money. They say, I want to be able to open, 1,000 new stores across Asia. But in order to do that, we need money to do it. And we don't have the money. So in order to do it, we're going to offer shares to the public to buy, and then they're all going to pay $107 to me, and then I'm going to get all this money, and then I can open stores across Asia, right? So the value of a company, right, when they say, wow, Tesla's worth it over $1 billion or whatever it is, the value of a company is their stock price, so $107, times the number of shares that they have, so times 1.6 billion. And when you multiply those two numbers, you can see down here, that's called their market capitalization. That's what it's worth, okay? So Nike is worth $168.49 billion, okay? Now, Santosh mentioned this before. What's the guarantee? Well, there is no guarantee. Stocks come with risk. They come with a lot more risk than a bond does. And the reason why is we don't know if all of a sudden Nike shoes are going to become obsolete, or no one wants to wear Nikes, right? What if Nike made shoes and there was a big issue at one of their plants, and all of a sudden their shoes weren't made of rubber, instead they were made out of cork, and no one wanted to wear their shoes, okay? Or if all their shirts were see-through, so no one wanted to wear their shirts. So there is risk, right? Or what if there was another COVID crisis and all of Nike stores had to shut down? Well, Nike stock isn't going to be worth as much because they can't sell their product. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there. Any questions about stock?
I don't know if
Yes.
this is off topic or not, but what are some of the best companies to invest in right now?
That is a great question. And I'm going to talk a bit about that later on, okay?
And another question for this investment, how much money would you get if Nike stocks kept going up?
Well, that all depends. So if you bought the stock at $107 and it went up to $110, you would have made $3. 110 minus 107 is 3, right?
Okay, but
So you only
sorry, you can continue.
so you only make money when you buy a stock and then sell it at a higher price.
Yeah. And one last question. Can you suppose the stock market for, I don't know, Tesla were to crash? Can I pull out of that investment?
Great question. Yes, you can sell. Now, sometimes, depending on where you buy and sell, there's fees associated with transactions, but yes, you can. Okay, let's keep going. So let's see what else we got here. So what stocks can you buy? So here's just a list of, I don't know, probably 50 different examples of stocks that you can buy. Now, you can't buy a stock in everything, right? So my favorite Coney is Greek Islands. They don't sell stock, okay? It's a privately owned company. There's lots of privately owned companies out there, but there are companies that are publicly traded, and here's a list of some of them. So let's say you love Amazon, you can buy Amazon stock. Let's say you like Colgate, right? You can buy, that's your favorite toothpaste, you can buy Colgate toothpaste, right? Pfizer came out with one of the vaccines. Let's say you think they're a great company, they've great researchers, and you really believe in them, you can buy stock in Pfizer, right? This is just a small sample of stocks that are available to you. So I'm sure you see some of your favorite companies listed here. But again, you can't buy stock in everything. So if you're a Detroit Lions fan, Lions are not a publicly traded business, right? They're owned by the Ford family, I believe, right? Okay. So where are stocks bought and sold? So on the left-hand side, you can see a picture. This is from the 1800s. This is the New York Stock Exchange. So if you went down to Wall Street, which is in Manhattan in the 1800s, and you wanted to buy a stock, this is where you would go. This is exactly what it would look like. And if you wanted to buy one share of Pepsi stock, you would be running around looking for the guy who was selling Pepsi stock, right? Because there was one guy and he had all the shares of Pepsi, and he would buy and sell them and, hold them up in the air and say, I'm selling Pepsi stock for $200. Who wants it for $200? And it was kind of like a mini auction, right? And everyone would collect these pieces of paper. And that's how stocks were sold. On the right-hand side, you can see what it looks like today, right? So people aren't running around. Everything's really done digitally, right? Everything is done online. You can buy and sell stocks online. You can see instantaneously what the prices are. You don't have to go run around and find the guy who's selling the stock you're interested in. That's the New York Stock Exchange. There's also the NASDAQ. There's the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the Shanghai Stock Exchange. There's lots of different stock exchanges out there. And there's even certain exchanges for commodities, right? So in Chicago, it's called the Mercantile, the Chicago Merc. And that's where they sell bonds, commodities, right? So there's lots of different stock exchanges. The most popular, most common is the New York Stock Exchange, as you can see on the right. So stocks, when we talk about risk, stocks are impacted by things happening in the world, right? So what makes their prices go up and down? So here's an example of Nike. If we go back to Nike, Nike has a lot of factories in Wuhan, in China. Well, when the COVID crisis began and there was the first outbreak in China, all the Wuhan factories closed. So look what happened to their stock. Their stock tanked, right? It dropped significantly because all of a sudden investors were like very nervous. They're saying, I don't want this stock anymore because they can't produce products. So people are selling it for cheap. They're saying, I don't want this. Someone buy it. Someone buy it. I may have bought it for $100. I'll sell it to you for 60. Right? So that's what happened with Nike. Let's look at Zoom. We're using Zoom right now. Well, early on in COVID, you know, pre-COVID, they were pretty stable. But then all of a sudden, everyone started having online school and online meetings and online webinars with their libraries. And all of a sudden, Zoom is getting a lot more business. So look, they just sort of took off. And then all of a sudden, their stock went down again. Why? Well, because there are more competitors in the space, right? Now there's Teams and there's all these other different providers of meetings virtually. And then people are returning back to work. So they don't need to use Zoom as much, right? So stocks are impacted by what's going on in the world. And again, people used to run around buying and selling it, and now they're doing it online. So someone said, oh my goodness, you know, Zoom is worth, you know, it was up at, you know, $550, but they're saying, oh my goodness, this isn't a product I want anymore. There's too many competitors. I'll sell it to you for $200, right? And that's exactly how the stock market works. Here's another quick example. ExxonMobil, it's a gas company, right? So here their ticker is XOM. So if you wanted to look them up, XOM. All of a sudden, you know, things were going well. All of a sudden, the lockdown happened. Travel stops. No one's going anywhere. You couldn't even drive, right? Unless it was for, what was it they told us? You could only go places if it was urgent matter or
Essential, like the grocery store.
essential. That's what it was, essential, right? So no one needs gas. So ExxonMobil is making less money. Their stock decreases, okay? They're pretty low, not doing so great throughout the crisis. And then all of a sudden their prices go back up again. Why? Well, prices have increased at the gas pump because of things happening with Russia and Ukraine and other inflationary factors, and prices have increased. So this is how stocks work. So when you're thinking about what is the best stock to buy, it's also important to think about how are certain stocks impacted by what happens in the world, right? So if you think that Kroger is a great stock, well, Kroger, let's think about what can impact Kroger. Well, if there are big storms throughout the country, what happens? People rush to the grocery store to stock up on goods, right? Hurricane season, people rush to the grocery store. That might make Kroger stock more valuable because they're making more money. At the same time, when people started going out again and eating at home less and spending less money at the grocery store and more money at restaurants, their stock went back down, right? Zeke, you have a question?
Yeah. I have like an example of like how I think like how stocks might go up and down.
Please, would love to hear.
So I'm a big computer nerd, and I know that new computer parts are coming out around this fall, and I think that might cause the brands that make them to go up in value.
Absolutely, great example. Or Zeke, what do you think happened when there were all these chip shortages?
The stocks went up because there's less of them to distribute. That means they're worth more.
So that is absolutely true, but they didn't have as much supply out there, right? So ultimately, Ford Motor Company or Dell isn't in the business of selling chips. They're in the business of selling computers, right? So maybe one computer is going to cost more money, but they have fewer computers they can sell. So their stock would go down, right? Because it's all about how much revenue, how much money that company is bringing in. Great example, Zeke. Thank you for sharing. Okay, that's stocks. Let's talk about bonds. What is a bond? So a bond is a unit of debt. It's an IOU. It's the best way to think about it. So governments often issue bonds to fund projects like highways, schools, or parks. Let's say Troy wants a new library. They want to expand the library, make it beautiful, and pay all their staff more money. And they need the money to do that. So they say, okay, we're going to issue a bond. And people can buy the bond, and you could buy the bond, let's say, for $100. And we promise that in 5 years' time, we'll pay you $150 back. And people will say, okay, that's a good deal. It's pretty guaranteed, right? Now, companies can issue debt also. This is not just something that governments do, but bonds are less risky than stock because the company, the government, whoever issues the bond has to pay the bondholders back before they can pay dividends to shareholders, right? So if a company has a stock or a bond and they have $100,000 of earnings, they first are going to have to pay back their bondholders, and then whatever's left will go to the stockholders. So the bonds are less risky, okay? Now, bonds are impacted by interest rates, right? I'm sure you've seen on the news, interest rates are now at 6%, or interest rates are going up by 0.75%, right? The Fed just announced that. What are interest rates? Interest rates are the cost of borrowing money. So if you go to the bank and you say, I need $1,000, they're going to say, okay, we'll give you $1,000 and here's the cost to do it. Okay, so all interest rates are the cost of lending. And the cost of lending impacts bonds. Now, way back when, on the right, you can see this. Here's a picture of Roosevelt. This is what a bond looked like. You would go to the bank and you'd buy a bond and it would look like this. This is a US savings bond. Now it's all done online. Okay, but everything used to be really archaic and with paper. So here's another great napkin finance image that I love. Bond, what is it? It's an IOU. So an investor lends money to the borrower. So my example, I lend money to the Troy Public Library, and then they're going to pay me back money and interest. Easy as that. Who issues bonds? Well, we have local government like Troy Library, right? Foreign governments, so the US government issues bonds all the time and foreign countries buy them. Foreign countries also issue debt. State governments, corporations, the US Treasury, those are bonds, right? So bonds, the key things to remember here is it's less risky. They have a fixed maturity date. So they'll say in 2 years' time, we'll pay you back. And you know exactly what they're going to pay you, okay? Any questions on bonds? Did I lose anyone here? I'm opening up to look at your faces. You're good? Okay. So has anyone heard of the word mutual fund? Anyone heard of that? Maybe some nods? Okay, I'm seeing nods.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for chiming in. A mutual fund is basically a collection of a lot of bonds, a lot of stocks or a lot of bonds. So there may be a technology mutual fund. That means that it's a little bit of Apple, it's a little bit of Facebook, it's a little bit of Dell, it's a little bit of Netflix, it's all these tech companies together. And you can buy one share of a mutual fund, but have access to all of these other ones, right? So it's pretty cool. So here's the example here. So basically investors get together, they take all their money to a mutual fund, which buys lots of different securities. Securities like a bond, a stock, whatever. They buy lots of them. And then whatever money those individual companies make, the mutual fund gives back to the investors. Okay. I really like mutual funds. I think mutual funds are a better first investment. That question came up a lot, like where do I put my money? I think mutual funds are much better than stocks because they give you access and exposure is a word we like to use, exposure to lots of different companies, but if you just buy one, right? So it's much harder if you had $100 to invest and you had to split $100 across 5 different companies, right? You're gonna have a little bit here, a little bit there. Whereas you can spend $100 on one mutual fund and have exposure to a lot of different companies, okay? We'll talk more about this throughout the presentation. ETFs are also very similar to mutual funds, and I like those too. If you've ever heard that word, ETF, exchange traded fund. They're very similar to mutual funds. Okay. So that's types of investments, stocks and bonds, and then I wanted to talk about mutual funds. Now let's talk about types of accounts. So a lot of people said they wanted, how do I open an account? What do I do? Okay. So there's 2 main buckets of accounts. We'll start with the left. You've got retirement accounts. Has anyone ever heard about a 401k plan? You've maybe heard your parents talk about, oh, my 401k is this or that. Okay. So a 401k is an employer-sponsored plan. So when you have a job one day, your employer will hopefully offer you a 401k. And it's like a benefit. The same way they give you health insurance, they also give you access to a 401k plan. Okay. You put money in it, and sometimes your employer will also put money in it, but that's what a 401k plan is. It goes to your employer. Now there's the non-employer plans, right? So let's say you want to save for your retirement beyond what your employer does, or you want, maybe your employer doesn't support your retirement at all. You would open something called an IRA or a Roth IRA, if those words sound familiar. An IRA is an individual retirement account. Okay, all that aside, if you just want to start investing, which I think is the majority of the group here tonight, you need to open an account. And the kind of account you're going to open is an individual brokerage account, okay? And that's an account that you can invest your money in, and you can, buy and sell stocks as you wish, okay? So write that down. Now, how do you get started and where do you do it? Well, first of all, you have to be 18 years old to own a stock on your own. Okay, so I know a lot of the group here was telling me they were 13 years old, 12 years old. No worries. You can be younger if a parent or guardian opens something called a custodial account on your behalf. Okay, so basically that means that there's someone who is providing some oversight to you. Okay, so if you want to open an investment account, reach out to a parent or guardian and ask them to open a custodial account. How much do I need to get started? This question came up quite a bit. Well, you really don't need that much money. There's no threshold to start. Many custodians, including Charles Schwab and Fidelity, so custodians are like the companies that you would give your money to invest. They have no minimum on their funds. So they'll say, you've got $10, you can start investing. You've got $5, you can start investing. Some funds, if you look at them, it will say minimum investment, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000. Ignore those. Look for the no minimum mutual funds or no minimum investments. And something I really like is a lot of these companies like Schwab and Fidelity allow for fractional share investing. What does that mean? Well, Nike, my example was Nike was selling for $107. Well, what if I only have $100? Can I not buy Nike? Well, some companies will allow you to buy a fractional share. They'll also allow you to buy $100 of Nike, even though one share is for $107. Okay. When do I start? Okay. It's always a good time to start investing, but now is a fantastic, unique, very special time. Why? Well, the market is down. The stock market is lower now than it was a year ago. Maybe has anyone heard their parents or their friends or anyone they know talking about how the stock market is not so good these days? Well, it's not so good for some people, but it's great for new investors. Why? Because it's on sale, right? There is nothing better than a great sale, right? Well, let's look at Meta, right? Meta is the ticker for, anyone know?
Facebook.
That's right, Facebook. I didn't know who said that, but well done. I couldn't see. Facebook. So last year on July 26th, Facebook was trading at $372 a share. Well, this year on July 26th, it's trading for $160. It's on sale 56%. Okay, what about this one? DIS. Anyone know what DIS's ticker is for? Alok.
Disney.
Disney, nice. Well done. It's on sale 43%. Okay, the last one, DAL. Anyone know the DAL ticker? No? Okay, it's Delta Airlines. Delta's on sale 25%. So all of these companies are actually on sale. So this is a great opportunity for new investors to buy stocks that they like at a discount, right? So I'm very excited for all of you new investors who want to start, because what better time than now? So where can you do this? So here are some companies that you probably have seen logos for or heard about. I personally invest my money at Vanguard, if that means anything to you. Fidelity and Schwab are also great. So Fidelity, let me show you how to do this. So can you see this web page that's pulling up, Holly? Awesome.
Yes.
So if you go to fidelity.com or schwab.com, whatever it is, here's their homepage, just fidelity.com. it will say open an account. Right here. You're gonna click open an account, and you're gonna want to open a brokerage account, right? Remember, there's retirement accounts and individual brokerage accounts. You want to open a brokerage account, right? Now, when you go through the process, you'll have to have an adult with you. You're gonna want to do it as you could do a joint with one of your parents on the account or a guardian, or you could do an individual account and just assign it's a custodial account, right? So you want to make sure you have a guardian. And if you have questions, I have found these chat with a representative features to be very, very helpful. Okay, so let me exit this. Okay, great. Now, how do you pick investments? Like, how do you know what's a good stock to buy or bond to buy? Anyone have an idea? Maybe you could put it in the chat or raise your hand. Santosh, what do you think?
When you see like kind of like a month ago when the stock was low and it's gaining like
Okay, but
more.
that's a great idea, right? But the thing is that if you buy things when they're gaining, you're buying when they're more expensive sometimes, right?
You buy them when they're in the lowest price.
You should buy when things are low, right? So actually, the great word of wisdom, the best way to make money is to buy low, sell high, right? So you don't always want to buy what everyone else is chasing, right? Like you don't want to buy the hottest thing out there because then it's gonna be too expensive, right? And eventually we'll come back down, and you don't want to have to only deal with the expense, right? But you don't want to buy losers, right? So there's a balance there, right, Santosh? Let's see in the chat. Someone said, when you hear new feature updates about more rare companies, Sydney, that's a great idea, right? So if you hear all of a sudden, does anyone shop at Abercrombie here? Anyone an Abercrombie shopper? I'm not, but my sister is. And she told me, and I don't even know if they're publicly traded, but she told me that, they changed their whole management team. They changed everything about them. They have a new fashion director, and their store is completely different. And, she really loves shopping there. Okay, when I was growing up, it wasn't the cool spot to shop. Okay. But now they are. So maybe if I heard this and I do some reading about them, I might say, oh, I'm impressed by their management team. I think that they're really, they've got, they're expanding their stores. They have a better online platform, right? Their e-commerce website is much better. Okay. Any other ideas? No? Okay. So here's some tips that I have. So the first one is that pick companies that you're interested in and enjoy reading about, right? You guys are all brand new investors. So I don't expect you to pick the diamond in the rough right now. I think that it's important for you just to learn about investing. If you love Netflix, you should buy Netflix, right? You should invest in companies that you like reading about. You would have to go on Yahoo Finance or on the Wall Street Journal and read about these companies regularly if you're an investor. So pick companies that you like to read about and learn about. So if you're a gamer, invest in a gaming company, okay? I like mutual funds and index funds. Again, mutual funds are those collection of a lot of funds. Index funds, like the S&P 500, that's the 500, it's actually 505 largest companies in the country. You can buy one share of those 500 companies. So if you're just getting started, I love investing in an index fund, right? Provides lots of diversification because you don't want to put all your risk in one basket. So for example, Netflix did great in the pandemic. So if you were buying them as they were going up, people are at home, they're binge watching TV, the stock price is going up, that's great for you. But now people are getting out and about more, their subscribers are down, people are watching less TV, especially in the summertime, and their stock prices fallen dramatically. If all your money was invested in Netflix, you would lose a lot of money. So we're gonna watch a quick video about diversification. Let me know, Holly, if you have any issue hearing this.
When you invest in a stock,
I can
you're
hear it. Can you
taking
guys hear it?
risk. that the value may go down.
You guys don't hear
rather
that?
than up.
I can hear it.
Get it? Investing can be risky.
All
One
good.
way to manage that risk is to learn about
Now I don't hear it.
the strategic decision of which baskets
There we
to
go.
put
It's
regularly.
it's again.
How many? The different baskets are called asset classes. To help you decide where to put your eggs, ask yourself, how much time do you have before you need to use your money? How comfortable are you with risk? And how does your current financial situation look? Diversification is about strategically putting the right mix of different eggs in each of your baskets. The key is that you shouldn't invest all your money in one company, one industry, one country, one anything. Ideally, you want your investments to be negatively correlated. So when one is going down, another is going up. Here are some typical ways to diversify your portfolio. Invest in companies in different countries. Own stock in small and large companies. And invest in companies in a variety of industries. One downside to diversification is if one of your investments does very well, you won't make as much as if it was your only investment. Conversely, if you owned only one stock and the company went out of business, you would lose more money than if you had diversified your money. Diversification won't eliminate risk, but it's a smart way to manage risk while allowing you to build your portfolio.
Okay, I hope if that wasn't how, if you couldn't hear everything, if you Googled Fidelity diversification, you can find it on YouTube. I think it's a great example of why I like mutual funds, right? Because you can buy $100 in one mutual fund, but have exposure to a lot of different companies, which gives you exposure to different industries, right? So you don't want to just have all your money in tech stocks, although that's what's hot and maybe popular in your life. It's great to have things like healthcare and oil and gas, right? And you know, commodities and food and natural resources and retail. These are all very important things that you want to have exposure to over time. But again, for young people, I just think you got to be interested in what you're investing in so you can read about it. But over time, you want to make sure you have diversification. You've got lots of different companies in your portfolio. So here's some websites for you if you're just getting started. So Yahoo Finance is a great resource. If they've got, you know, lots of articles, blogs, things you can read. The Wall Street Journal, I think you need a subscription for most of their articles, but on the left-hand side of the paper every day, they've got kind of like bullet points of what's happening in the business world. Just start skimming those and reading those. And I think that's not only great for investors, it's just great for understanding what's happening in the world around you. BloomAdvisors.com, that's my company's website. We write articles that people can understand. So feel free to check those out all the time. And, you know, maybe you'll find useful, helpful information as you get started. If any of you are on Instagram, I happen to like this one influencer. She calls herself Mrs. Dow Jones. The Dow Jones is actually an index. It's a collection of companies, and she calls herself Mrs. Dow Jones. I like her because she uses like things like the Kardashians to explain different concepts. So give her a follow if you are on social media. And let's get to questions. So feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Or Holly, if you got questions that I didn't answer.
There you go, you got one.
All right, Alok.
So if there was like a big recession, you know, like something that happened like in the 30s, like what would happen to like the person that invested their funds? Like would they lose all their money or?
Yeah, so that's why when we talk to clients, and it's important not to invest every penny that you have in the market or in any one fund. We always tell people it's important to have an emergency fund. So if the market crashed and you needed that money, you'd be in trouble. So we always tell people you need to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in cash in your bank account, so that if something happened, you have 3 to 6 months to get back on your feet. And that was really relevant during COVID, right? Like a lot of people lost their jobs. It was a scary time, and maybe not you guys, a few years ago, maybe you didn't realize what your parents were navigating. It was very scary, especially for, people with children. figuring out school and such. And if all of a sudden you couldn't work because you had to stay home with your kids, that could have really impacted your finances, right? So, so that's why it's important to keep some cash, and you should never invest all your money just in case something were to happen.
Thanks.
Is it, no problem. Is it say it for me, Vedant?
Yeah, that's how you pronounce it.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
I asked this question earlier. I don't know if you answered it or not, but what are some of the best companies today to invest in?
So I think you should look at mutual funds. I like a total market index fund that gives you exposure to the whole market. Okay. I'm not a stock picker. We are long-term investors at Bloom Advisors, so we create diversified portfolios for our clients. But I would say, again, I would recommend that you invest in companies that you find to be interesting, so that you'll be eager to read about them and learn about what's happening in the market around them.
Like the top 5 companies in stocks, I should invest in some of those.
It's up to you if you find those to be interesting. But if you're just getting started, I would say either pick the companies that you find to be interesting that you like to read about, or I would say put your money in the index fund or a mutual fund that's going to give you a lot of different funds within them. Okay.
Okay.
And you can find like a technology mutual fund if that's what interests you, right? Or retail, or a Asia Pacific mutual fund, or a European mutual fund, right? There's lots of different ones out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Santosh,
I have 2 questions.
go for it.
My first question is, can you lose money in the stock market?
Absolutely. So we saw those, if you remember earlier in the presentation, if I can get back there. Great. So let's look back at this Nike example. If you bought Nike in January 2020, it was about $100 a share, around there, right? But then if all of a sudden you needed to sell, you sold the investment in March of 2020 because you didn't like it anymore, it was selling for about $65 a share. So that's a difference of $35 that you would have lost.
I meant, like, do you have to pay the company money? Like,
No. So once you buy it, you hold it. You don't have to do anything. The only time that you would do anything is when you sell it. Now, it's important actually to hold on to your investments and not buy and sell rapidly, right? So let's say you bought this at $100 a share and you don't touch it, which is actually one of the most important things in investing often, is just not do anything. And you are still holding it today. Well, now that $100 is now worth about $110. But it's only worth something, Santosh, if you sell it. That's an important point, right? So if you bought it at 100 and today it's worth 110, you might think in your head you've made $10, but you really haven't until you sell it, right? Does that make sense?
yeah. And for my second question is, should you ever, like, since if you have like lots of money and like $1,000 and you want like a Nike, should you buy like 3 stocks of Nike?
It's up to you, right? You're a new investor. So maybe you would say, you really like Nike, so maybe you want to buy a couple Nike shares. But again, if you put all your money in Nike and the market were to drop significantly and you needed that money, you would lose a lot of money. So maybe you buy some Nike and then maybe you buy like a total market mutual fund or index fund. So you have access to a lot of different things. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, there were a bunch of questions in the chat. So let's
Yep.
see.
One was, what is an index fund?
Great question. So an index fund is very similar to a mutual fund or an ETF fund. An index fund is a collection of it follows an index. So there's all of these indexes out there, like the S&P 500, if you've heard of that, or the NASDAQ. And index funds just do what those other groups do, right? So you get access to a lot of different funds and it just follows what the index does, right? So index funds are great too. I like them because they give you access to a lot of different things, right? And again, I've reiterated this a couple times. It's important to not have all your eggs in one basket, right? I see that, is it Guggen asked about smaller companies. Yes, there are other indexes for smaller companies too. They call it, so there's large cap, which stands for large market capitalization. So remember market cap, if I can go back. Market cap is multiplying value of all the shares times the number of shares that there are. So the market cap for Nike was $168 billion. But there are also lots of smaller companies out there, and those are called small cap companies because they have a smaller market cap. So yes, you can buy stock in small cap companies. There are even small cap mutual funds. So it's a great question. Is it Prisha mentioned, so investing your money over time, the sooner you start, the better. So I thought I had, oh yeah, we did talk about this slide. I'll go back to this again. It is, you know, we talked about this earlier, maybe you had missed this, but it's so important. It's not about timing the market or buying the right stock, really. It's most important about time in the market, how long you are an investor. So in this example, there was Jack and Jill. Jack was investing $24,000 in total over 10 years, whereas Jill was investing $72,000 over 30 years. And so Jill invested 3 times as much as Jack, yet still made less money because she didn't have as much time in the market. Okay, let's see. Kara, there's no limit in the number of stocks you can buy. You could, in fact, buy up all the stocks of a company. That is what Elon Musk was trying to do with Twitter, right? He was trying to buy up all of the stocks so that he could take it private and own it himself, right? So there's no limit to the number of stocks you can buy. How often should you watch over the market? Great question, Kara. If you are we tell people often, don't look at your portfolio more than, once a month, once every 3 months. You don't want to look at it obsessively every day and then make changes to it. If anything, you buy and you hold, you wait and you see what happens. Mutual funds, the price is set for the day. So it doesn't matter morning, evening, buy or sell. The stock market's open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if you were to buy one individual stock of Nike, you could only buy it between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. If you buy it after 4 p.m., you'll get the price offered at 8 a.m. All right, were there any other questions, Holly?
I think Santosh re-raised his hand.
Oh, Santosh, what's up?
I forgot my question.
It's okay.
We have another one. Prisha raised her hand.
Oh no, I remember my question. So, say, are there like websites where it would like estimate? I don't know if you wanted to see what where a stock would go next. Would there be I don't know, like a website or something which would estimate like where the stock would go next?
So I really there isn't something that will tell you where it's going to go because no one knows where it's going to go. But for those of you who are gamers, I really like this. I originally was going to talk about it, but I wasn't sure it'd be too complicated, but it seems like there's interest. TD Ameritrade, which is another one of those custodians like Schwab and Fidelity and Vanguard. They have this virtual stock picker game where essentially you can pick stocks and see what happens and make your own portfolio. So you could, you can learn how to use it. It's very easy to use. But let's say here, KR. This is Kroger. We were talking about Kroger. If I wanted to buy or sell Kroger stock, you could do it here. I want to buy Kroger. I want to buy $100. It was down for the day. And you get fake money and you can play. So this is a great place for those of you who are interested in learning more about the market, building a portfolio. A lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Prisha's back.
All right, Prisha.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for leaving. My iPad died, so I'm joining from my mom's phone.
Don't worry.
We have it recorded. You can see what you missed. I had a question.
Yes.
So when I was looking up stuff for like teens and investing, penny stocks kept coming up. Is that something they should be investing in?
So, so penny stocks, I want to give you the proper definition. So it's it's stocks that are for less than $5 a share. So I didn't know I thought it was $10. Now, penny stocks, it's sort of irrelevant to me, Holly. I think that people should invest in whatever companies they believe in, especially because you can buy a fractional amount of a company, right? You don't have to buy a full Nike share, even though it's $100. If you only have $20, you can buy a fractional share of Nike, right? So I'd rather people pick investments that they like versus just looking for the discounted items.
That's true.
Any other questions? All right, well, if not, thank you all for having me.
Bye.
Okay. Oh, they're saying bye.
Oh, okay. Thank you all for having me. This was a
Yeah,
lot of
thanks for
fun.
coming.
I'm excited to hear about
Thank
what
you.
success you have in the market. And please reach out if you have other questions. This was great. Thank you, Holly, for having me.